So our guest today is Dustin Dillberg. Dustin is a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, owner of Pain Free Kauai in Lihue. Dustin Dillberg is a graduate of the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine, the Egoscue University, and Pettibon Spinal Technologies. He has extensive experience working with many top professional athletes speaking around the country on topics of nutrition and natural medicine, and has also worked at Rady's Children's Hospital here in San Diego, Egoscue Clinic, and he continues to teach as an instructor for Egoscue University. Dustin returned to Kauai in 2007, bringing his knowledge and experience in Chinese medicinal herbs, nutrition, postural therapy, and he's returned excited to offer the best in functional healthcare and sports medicine to aid of his hometown community. The Pain Free Kauai Clinic specializes in natural healthcare solutions, including stress-relieving acupuncture, Egoscue Method of postural corrective exercise, deep tissue laser therapy, and lifestyle medicine. Dr. Dillberg has also co-authored a book with professional pro surfer Bethany Hamilton called Body and Soul. Dustin, it's super great to have you with us today, joining from beautiful Kauai. And we were just talking beforehand that you just got back from New Zealand scoring some surf, and I'm jealous. And did you get some good surf in Kauai as well?
Yeah, there's plenty of fun waves to be had, and feel blessed to live in such a paradise.
That's awesome. So let's just jump right in. You offer a really wide range of services. Of course, you're acupuncturist and Egoscue training and nutritional coaching and mentoring. And I'm curious how you split your time with all of those specialties. And so, like, what are your average clients like? What does an average client session look like? Do you integrate these things with everybody? Or are you more focused in one particular area? Or give us a snapshot of what your sessions look like.
Great question. And it really is unique. Every single situation, I tried to remove my own thought process and just kind of be present with the patient.
Okay.
I love looking at the body like it's a big chain. And if we can identify that chain's weakest link and address that, because the chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right?
Right.
It has a breaking point. And oftentimes that's in people's emotional patterns, stress levels. Other people, it's going to be in their physical posture and alignment, old injuries and things like that, or nutrition, or sleep patterns, breathing. It really can be whatever it is. So I want to try to address that in a unique and specific pattern, no matter who we're dealing with, so that we can get the fastest and most dramatic results as possible.
So really individualized, unique approach, specific to each individual patient.
Yeah, and the more techniques that we use or have available in our toolbox, I found just to be so powerful, in that it gives you a different set of lenses to look at even your existing toolbox, your tools with.
Yeah.
Chinese medicine is my first love of medicine. It seemed like a mystical, magical art form when I was introduced to it as a very young child. And so I fell in love with it. And now watching Western medicine describe and understand Chinese medicine from a different lens, I found really fascinating.
Uh-huh.
And if we add in, other aspects of nutrition and posture and movement and all of that, you start looking at this image from such a three-dimensional view. You start looking at it from the backside and the other side. So the big mountain that you want to try to achieve, the apex of and conquer, I think needs to be looked at from all the different angles, because you don't know if you've done it perfectly just to get to the top. There might be a whole different side that you had no idea about. Totally.
Yeah, I guess I should back up and ask you how did you get interested in acupuncture in the first place?
My father's an acupuncturist.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
he's
that.
a chiropractor and acupuncturist. His story is amazing. He was introduced to TCM through a master from Asia, and Emma Chung. He brought me along. I was in a unfortunate auto accident. I was hit by a car while I was riding my bike when I was a little kid. Had extensive injuries from that, and post-injury had, from ligament damage in my neck, migraines, and all sorts of other issues. acupuncture removed my headaches. It made me feel like I was balanced again. And of course, as a young kid, there was the fear of needles and things like that. But my dad and luckily Bruce Lee got me through thinking from a different perspective of how great acupuncture is. And I just absolutely jumped in with both feet.
Huh. Does your dad still practice?
He does. He practices here on the south side of Kauai as well. He's paved a wonderful path for me. Okay. And yeah, he was the one that started teaching me the basics and allowing me to needle him from the age of 7 on.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Really blessed to have that upbringing.
I don't think I'd let my 9-year-old near me with needles, but maybe I'll try that.
Yeah, check it out. It's a test of faith, that's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
So you guys don't work together, and do you guys ever share clinic?
We do share quite a few patients, and we work on each other a ton. I worked in his clinic when I first came out of school for 5 years, and was blown away by a mixture of techniques. He does some incredible functional medicine testing and work, a lot of in-depth posture work as well. He was my contact to Dr. Pettibon for real in-depth spinal rehab cases. I introduced him to the Egoscue Method. So we have a lot of symmetry in our practice, and we love working together.
Oh, that's great.
But I also needed to spread my wings and prove in a lot of ways to myself that I could practice the way that I felt like I was led to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I can totally relate to that. Not for myself, but my wife she's a professional dancer and choreographer, and so is her mother. And so I see that kind of lineage in our family as well. And it's how important it is to have that type of individuality and expression. It's really important. Yeah.
And it's great though, to have those influences and to have the resources to be able to, call on those so close to you that have your best interest at heart to guide you and kind of bounce ideas off of and everything. I feel so fortunate.
Yeah, especially when you're not young in practice anymore, but when you are young in practice, it's like, I remember when I was first licensed, I used to call my teachers all the time, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I've got, this amputee with phantom pain. What do I do? Alex Tiberi's like, needle the table,
Yeah. I remember him telling me the same thing. That's awesome.
Are you serious?
Yeah. That's truly. He said, just lay that needle down right where your intent is.
Yeah. Did it work?
I have used that a few times, and to be honest, I haven't used that as much as far as just the table, but with a lot of energy and intent. And phantom pain is such a fascinating thing, and amputees are such a blessing to work with. For sure. And so, there's some interesting techniques that he definitely opened my eyes to, sent me down a path. So I want to ask you about the spinal technology work you did with Dr. Pettibon. Can you share? Because I'd never heard of Dr. Pettibon, so I'm really curious about that, among other things, obviously, that you do. Sure. So Dr. Pettibon, really ahead of his time in a lot of ways. He looked at the body and rehab. Like one of my favorite sayings that he would throw at us is, we practice rehab supported by chiropractic and not the other way around. And that is as he was, teaching chiropractors and all of that. He was actually the one that in a lot of ways talked me out of going to chiropractic school. I was on that path, and he said, Chinese medicine is really in so many ways the root of what we're doing with the work that Pettibon stands for. And so through, bone setting techniques and tween structural work and all of that, those are your hands-on techniques. He, of course, specialized in many great mobilization techniques, but he called it mobilizations and not adjustments.
Okay.
He taught me that, and that we're not necessarily trying to force the spine into a different alignment, but rather mobilize it and retrain the nervous system and the muscles and how to hold that. Mm-hmm. And so he was very rehab focused, and he specialized in being able to correct the curves of the spine in a more profound way than I had seen, and continue to search for something that can kind of come close to that.
Is he a chiropractor?
He's a chiropractor.
Okay.
Yeah, he passed a couple years ago and made a huge impact. I think he spoke at or taught at most of the chiropractic schools in the nation at one point or another,
Mm-hmm.
and was a fantastic asset to our healthcare community. He retired mostly in Gig Harbor, Washington, and was doing some fantastic work. So I had a great opportunity to work with him and pretty closely with him in multiple clinic settings, and I found that the connection of Pettibon's work and Egoscue, which they had never connected to my knowledge, but they are so synergistic and fantastic. And so looking at it kind of in a microscope on the spinal level and neurological level, and then on a greater level on like head to toe postural components, beautiful marriage.
So would he use postural corrective exercises like the Egoscue teaching, or would it be mostly, therapists like you working on the body with manual mobilizations?
Very much rehab exercise focused.
Okay.
He had something called the link trainer, a lot of foam block exercises and other movements. But what he found to be most effective is a weight, like a harness situation, where the easiest way to describe it is we know that the body pulls away from weight stimulus. Mm-hmm. If you hold the weight out in front of you, your body counterbalances and pulls back. And so we found for forward head posture, which we know is a huge problem and a worsening problem with our technological age.
Right.
If you were to put a weighted head harness on the front of your forehead, your body would pull against that and strengthen the correct neck muscles to obtain that proper cervical curve and alignment again. Okay. And so you could offset that if you have a head tilt and other things.
And you adjust with weight, counterbalancing weight.
Exactly. So head, shoulder, and hip weight harnesses could take twist, rotation, and other components of spinal misalignment out of the equation.
Was he using, did he design any specific apparatus like straps or bands or specific weights to work on different areas of the body? I mean, the head's kind of tricky, right?
Yeah, he has a number of patented weighted harnesses. So head harness, shoulder harness, hip harness. He has a repetitive cervical traction unit that I think is fantastic, and a wobble chair that I think is one of the most profound rehabilitative tools for lumbar disc injuries.
A wobble chair, like the wobble board?
Kind of, yeah. It's a chair that is on a real small axis. Pivot point, so it can move in every different direction, and so you can take the spine through range of motion that helps to rehydrate and rehabilitate the disc and the supporting ligaments.
Nice.
Stability structures.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
It's fantastic. Take a look. Pettibon Institute, I believe, is their website, and you can Google like Pettibon rehabilitative exercise. There's a whole bunch of great YouTubes.
Does he have, he's passed, unfortunately. Are there, obviously there's people that are carrying the torch. I mean, you're using it in practice. Do they continue to teach it, or? Yeah,
there's certification seminars and continuing education opportunities out there still. And it's fantastic work. Awesome. They're expanding more in the direction of functional neurology in a lot of ways as well, from my understanding.
Okay. So I noticed, when I was looking at your website, which by the way, for our listeners is painfree-kauai.com. That's painfree, one word, -kauai.com. And we'll link to it in this podcast, which is great website, by the way. Really, I always like looking at people's websites and then meeting them in person. This just really captures you. It's very upbeat. Pretty. Not that you're pretty, you're a handsome guy. Okay. But
you're too kind.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a friendly website, but I was looking here, you have a YouTube video where you're training Bethany Hamilton. And yeah. I noticed you're using the TRX system in that particular training video. And so I kind of want to get you to elaborate on that a little bit. First of all, how did you meet Bethany Hamilton? For those surfers that are listening in, you all know Bethany Hamilton. For others who may not know Bethany, can you give us some background on her a little bit and how you guys hooked up and the book you wrote together and how that
absolutely
happened?
Bethany is a Kauai girl. She's born and raised here on island. She is an incredible surfer. I think most avid surfers, especially those that really study the sport and understand technique and skill level talent, agree that she most likely would have multiple world championships under her belt had she not been attacked by a shark when she was 13. She lost her arm in that attack, surfing a spot on the North Shore here called Tunnels. And she used that unfortunate event to the best of her ability. I mean, she's influenced millions of people on how to live a more fulfilled life, a healthy life. She's such a health advocate. It's incredible. She really practices what she preaches. She's a huge inspiration to, I think, everyone in the world. She had a movie created about her and her story called Soul Surfer, and has a new documentary style film coming out called Unstoppable. It's going to be released in June or July this year.
Awesome.
And it's a real live, step-by-step process or story of honestly how she lives. She sets goals and she achieves them. So I had the opportunity to travel to Tahiti with her during some of the filming of that, and watching her take off on, waves at Chopu. She is an incredible human being, and I'm really honored to be able to work with her. She we live on kind of opposite sides of the island, and it's funny how many microsystems and bubbles there are on this island, but through different church connections and just the surfing industry, I competed against her brother growing up. And so when I came back from school, we started working on her healthcare, and nice. She is the type of woman you'll learn from that documentary if you're able to watch it. Literally, you say, I want you to do 2 of these, and she comes back and she says, "Is there a problem if I did 10?" And she keeps pushing the envelope. And so I just was in awe and soaked it up as we started working together. Everything I gave her, she wanted more, and she asked for more, and she completed that plus 10 kind of a thing. And so I was able to learn so much by working with her. I was able to start deconstructing posture therapy in a different way, because amputees, especially, above the elbow or above the knee amputees, they are missing a quadrant of stabilization to their spine.
Yeah.
They aren't getting the stimulus to that quadrant or limb. And so their spine has a tendency to really divert towards scoliosis and things like that. So we have constructed and devised multiple plans been working with her over 10 years.
Wow.
To combat that and to hone her skills, and then take her performance levels to whatever degree that we can push them. Yeah. And nutrition and sleep and breathing and all of that. She's just hungry for more. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I was really impressed, just speaking to how you were able to customize her workout with the TRX band, and how you were doing some stabilization. I forget what you were doing, but you moved it way up high on the shoulder, so she was still able to work, the lats or her core and stuff, and it was really impressive.
Her engagement of her scapula and stabilization to her spine has always been a major focus, and then like being able to transfer stabilization and muscle engagement from her missing limb to her opposite hip and down to ankle stability, even in different things through different forces. The TRX is a great tool that we've been able to use with that, but we've pulled out a couple dozens, if not 100 different tools at different times, just trying to see, now that you've achieved or conquered that demand, where's a weak link? Where's the instability, and how do we most directly address that? So through patch training with Egoscue, all sorts of fun stuff.
Is there a patch over there?
I built a patch, actually thanks to my father. We built a patch and have used it to its basically till it broke down through our moisture and the wood started rotting and things like that.
Yeah.
We also have the portable patch circulating through our school systems on Kauai. It's available. If anybody on Kauai is looking for the patch, we have it available, and they're happy to train people up on it. So
That's cool. So for our listeners that don't know what the patch is, maybe you could share a little bit with what the patch is. We talked to Brian Bradley, Vice President of Egoscue, a while ago on one of our podcasts, and we linked to it there. But for our listeners here today, Why don't you describe what the patch is for them?
The patch is basically an obstacle course that forces you to work through your dysfunctions rather than around them. You're going to be going over things, under them, balancing on things. You're going to be using your body in very functional patterns to create symmetry and balance. And so we do everything equally on both sides. We don't let people get around, their little faults or cheats. And we address movement patterns through different demands. And so it can be, which was mimicked after, honestly, a tomato patch, just a bunch of beams that you go over, under, climbing apparatuses. The patch that we have on my father's property had a big, cargo net climbing area, all sorts of fun stuff. And so the patch doesn't need to be anything that structured. However, I mean, we can create a patch in a small room with, a couple little things, or you can even imagine what the obstacle is, and you can always do a patch workout with zero equipment. And
could be a tree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really the whole point of it, is let's get outside of our contained environment. Yeah. Let's get back into nature. Let's move the way we're designed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So patch has been awesome. Kauai is an interesting little mecca for athletes also. Since, San Diego is where PCOM's, home base is.
Yeah.
The closer for the Padres, Kirby Yates, who just got his 12th save, I think last night or the night before, this early on in the season, and it's doing great. He's from about 4 miles from here.
Oh, is that right?
And yeah, another patient of mine.
Nice.
Awesome person and great athlete.
Awesome.
Yes.
Hey, I want to go back and ask you about one more question about Bethany, and I promise we'll move on.
Yeah.
How does she catch? I can barely catch waves. Okay. I've been surfing since I was 6. She's got one arm, dude. How does she catch waves? She, in the most loving sense of the word, she is a freak, and she is so determined. Yeah.
And so, and it doesn't stop there. So she is efficient as can be. She figures out how to use her body in ways that most people take for granted. So she uses the buoyancy of her board to initiate the movement and paddle. She knows timing better than any surfer I've ever come across.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't stop there. When she catches the wave, she has to stand up with one arm.
Yeah.
And then from standing up, which I encourage any surfer that's listening to go play around with.
Just try that. You'll just fall off.
It took me a while. What I'd do is literally take one arm, hold the back of my surf shorts, and try to paddle and catch waves on one arm, even on a longboard.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly fun exercise, actually. And with practice, you can achieve it. Like,
I'm going to try that.
When it's small at Cardiff, go play.
Yeah.
Take your longboard out and try to stand up with one arm, switch arms, try to do it with the other arm, because I don't want you going getting any postural imbalances on that. Try to stand up regular versus goofy and all those types of things, because it's incredible what your body can adapt to when it's tested or pushed to that limit.
That makes sense.
Then, Bethany's doing big air 360s, and with
that's amazing
balance.
I know.
She's catching literally 50-foot waves at certain places that will be shown in the documentary.
I can't wait to see that.
Surfing chopu and pipeline. She won a pipe contest. And those are the scariest waves that, I've been surfing since I was about the same age as what you stated there, and love surfing. And I am scared to death of surfing pipe. And paddle my heart out with both arms when it's, a little overhead, and she's out there triple the size and handling. So she is
awesome.
An incredible athlete.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, are you working with, are there any other pro athletes that you're working with, or what's the sort of ratio pro versus just lay people, and what's your patient base like?
I work with so many awesome people. Most of them are not pro athletes.
Okay.
Most of them are, heroes in their own respect, whether that's because they are mothers, grandmothers, parents, fathers, plumbers, electricians. It doesn't matter to me. I feel like everybody is so special that way. So I hope and pray that no one thinks that by working with a pro athlete that changes who you are as a practitioner or makes you better than someone else. No way. I am so proud of Kirby Yates, though, just because he's one of the nicest guys on the planet, and he's achieving such success with the Padres. I work with a few NFL players from time to time, other MLB players, and let's see, a lot of the surf community. So the surf world is where most of my pro athletes are. Sebastian Zietz
Nice.
is on the world tour right now. And I traveled around to the championship tours destinations the first couple of years out of school, and we're working with a lot of the pros on contest sites. And that was a fantastic opportunity. So thanks to Freddie Patacia and Jordy Smith and a lot of those guys that helped fund my way to kind of work with the pro athletes on that level. I'm very thankful for the opportunity and experience with that.
Yeah, that's an awesome gig.
Yeah.
I went to high school with Steve Sherman, he was, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a good friend of mine.
Guy.
Yeah. Steve was he was the photo editor for our listeners of Surfing Magazine. And he's a brilliant photographer, mostly a portrait photographer for all the pro surfers and stuff. He's
still doing great work though. And I see him on the North Shore quite a bit.
Yeah.
Of Oahu.
Yeah. He's a local guy, Torrey Pines High School guy. So let's talk a little bit about how you incorporate some of the other modalities. So, we know you're doing acupuncture, doing great work with training and just a variety of postural stuff. And I'm adjusting my posture as I'm thinking about your training. Thank you very much.
It's the magic of that word, posture. You say
it's just automatically. It's like
right away.
Sit up straight. Talk about some of the ways in which you're using breath work, and I know you're really interested in breath work in your work. So how are you incorporating that? There's so many, different approaches. I mean, you got the Wim Hof method, you've got traditional Qigong methods, you've got, the yogic breathing, you've got even now, like I was listening to podcasts with Ben Greenfield interviewing, what's his name? Ted Hardy. He instructs free divers, and his whole system of breathing techniques totally different than Wim Hof. But how are you incorporating? What is your background in breath work, and how are you working with that?
Well, background wise, breathing is such a key component to surf training, and being in the water. If you're going to try and fish, dive, or you're concerned about being held under by big waves, breathing became of interest to me at a young age. Grew up, swimming to the bottom of the ocean, grabbing a rock and running as far as you can, doing all that kind of stuff is just a grom playing around at the beach. But breathing, I think, is worthy of its own podcast. And maybe of, a couple thousand episodes. There are so many components to the breath. And I think it's so fundamental and foundational to every system in our body. It's connected. As we know in Chinese medicine, everything is connected. And in posture work, the way that, Pete Egoscue is always hammering that, our body from head to toe is one basically muscle, separated into different components or parts, the way that Thomas Myers describes also in anatomy trains. Our bodies are so intertwined. However, the diaphragm and the breathing component and the lungs, I think, are kind of a linchpin that are really a place that we should all investigate at the start.
Totally.
So let's talk about it from posture perspective. Most people are not hip engaged. They don't drive from the hips. We talk about it in zones of muscle firing and neurological sequencing. We should be firing 1, 2, 3. And just to kind of quickly go over what zones 1, 2, and 3 mean as I go over that with my patients is your zone 1 is your diaphragm, should always be working properly. Psoas and glutes. Okay. I know Brian Bradley talks about the psoas and glutes being the king and queen of posture. And I think the diaphragm is just so tightly related to those. Mm-hmm. I borrowed that from multiple other systems of calling that zone 1. Okay. Zone 2 is between the knees and the shoulders. Zone 3 is head to toe, including the arms. And so we should always fire. I don't care if you're just clicking your mouse on your computer. Zone 1 first should be neurologically activated prior to zone 2 or 3. Unfortunately, we fail to move properly, and our body is such an amazing adaptive, unit that we can fire differently for a certain, period of time, but it starts to create problems. And so, coming back to the breath and the diaphragm, if we are not firing zone 1 properly, our hips aren't stable, and we're not driving our movements from zone 1, our breathing gets disengaged. And I would say with well over 80% of my patients, they have a breathing issue that's severe, not just moderate. It's a severe breathing problem. And the component of your diaphragm not being capable of contracting and releasing to bring oxygen into your lungs is due to its compensation as being a stabilizer. Mm-hmm. It's your internal guide wire. It's going to contract to a certain degree and in different ratios at different areas of that umbrella-like diaphragm, just to keep your torso somewhat stable, because your glutes have turned off, your hips aren't activated, you're rounding forward, hunched over a computer more hours than you should be.
Right.
And so when we breathe on average 22,000 times a day, yet we're not using that diaphragm that's designed to take that type of burden and is the most efficient way to do so, we then compensate and start firing our scalenes and our traps and all of these other upper body and neck issues. It further worsens the forward head posture. Our lymphatic system is shot once that happens. Your subclavian veins have tons of muscle tension and stagnation there. Yeah. And that's where your lymph system's draining back into your cardiovascular system. Right. The sternocleidomastoid, that largest lymph node network, sits directly under your diaphragm. If you're not contracting and releasing, pushing that lymph fluid back up to your upper body and heart, you're going to be stagnant. You're going to feel, effects such as drowsiness and slow recovery and all of that. You're not getting 22,000 reps of digestive massage. Your chi is going to be stagnant all over the place. And if your diaphragm isn't contracting for your breath very efficiently, I've found that your glutes almost can't fire the way that they're supposed to. And so we just have this downward spiral between postural imbalances and movement problems to detoxification issues. Our liver isn't going to be as supple and soft. I mean, liver, chi, and blood stagnation, we know how often we see that. Yeah. I don't know many people that don't have some type of digestive deficiency these days. I wish it weren't the case, but it just seems like we all do. Totally. Everything kind of comes back to breathing. And so if we can stimulate our breathing patterns and test and challenge them in different ways, I think we're going to be a healthier human in every aspect. I like doing that with breath holds. I love the Wim Hof method. I love what that does for your neurological system and neurotransmitter changes and chemistry. But I don't think it's the exclusive or only way we should train our breath, the same way that we shouldn't only train exercises by doing squats. For sure. We got to work out in different ways. And so I don't think there's necessarily a wrong breathing technique out there. It's just how you use it and how balanced you are. Where is your weak link, and what stimulus does your body need? And I think that's where working with somebody that loves and is passionate about breath work comes in handy, so they can kind of guide you and make your time most efficient.
Yeah. As you're talking about the zones, I'm reflecting on the different cultural influences that maybe, I don't know if they're the cause, or there's just the differences, right? You have pardon the generalization, but you have the Eastern, let's just call them the Eastern cultures, where we don't have this sort of upper machismo, bench pressing, huge biceps and triceps and all this upper stuff. Zone 3, right? Right. Zone 3, 2 and 3. Yeah. Zone 2 and 3 heavy stuff. Right. They're more dropped down, right, into zone 1. So by definition, they're maybe breathing better. Right. And so maybe these cultural differences play a big part. Here we want to tighten up the abdomen. We want to look all nice and swimsuit ready, right? Right. And we're chest breathers fundamentally.
Mirrors are a huge problem with breathing patterns. And
mirrors,
you look in the mirror. I don't know many people that don't suck it in and start to breathe differently within seconds of looking at yourself in the mirror. Right. And that's an interesting component when you look at, our paintings of those Eastern influencers, Buddha and, people of that nature. They have a very different posture. For sure. Not saying that they're posturally perfect, or it's our goal necessarily of a balanced health, but it is definitely an opposing, viewpoint for sure.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So, talked a bit about breath work and how it influences, posture and lymphatic system. And I really appreciate your insights on that, and looking at those zones. That should give our listeners a lot of food for thought. And hopefully they're, as we're talking about that, they're doing some introspection right now. Let's talk a little bit about your approach to some of the nutrition topics that are kind of hot today, like fasting, intermittent fasting, and ketogenic diets and that kind of thing.
Sure.
What are you seeing in your clients? What are you advocating? What are you recommending? What's your personal interest?
Such a fun set of topics. I think that we see these trends come and go. We see, different things come with, I guess, extreme perspectives.
Yeah.
And I love experimentation. I think our bodies should always be in a state of assessment, experiment, figure out what's working for you, what's not working for you. Identify how your own makeup, genetically or however you want to describe it, adapts to your surroundings and stimulus. And I don't think everybody thrives on a ketogenic diet.
Okay.
I am an advocate for keto in a lot of senses. I've seen absolute huge, like groundbreaking changes in many of my, metabolic syndrome patients, my heart disease patients, even, certain detoxification issues are clearing up so rapidly once people get into a healthy state of keto. But there's a lot of people doing keto wrong, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of people who are doing keto on very low quality bacon as their primary and only food source for majority of each day.
So let's back up for our listeners and describe what the keto diet is, or what are the proponents of ketogenic diets professing?
That your body can use fat as fuel. And so I'm a huge fan of being balanced with your amounts of fat. But so keto is the state of burning fat as fuel, producing ketones as the so-called exhaust, the byproduct of burning fat. Your brain uses ketones as one of its primary fuel patterns. Insulin sensitivity is resensitized or balanced by ketones to a good degree as well. So there's a lot of benefits of having ketones circulate throughout your system. I think doing keto correctly, which I don't think there's one way to do keto correctly, but to identify how your body adapts properly to it is the way to go. So being much more vegetable heavy than most basic keto level practices profess, that you kind of have to stay away from all carbs, vegetables being a big component of that. Yeah. I don't agree with that. I think what Dr. Will Cole is doing with Ketotarian, his book, being a plant-based keto diet, I think is really fascinating. I think it's very eye-opening for a lot of those that are going hardcore meat-focused paleo keto.
What's the name of that book?
Ketotarian.
Oh, Ketotarian. Not familiar with it. Ketotarian.
Like vegetarian, but ketotarian. And it's a plant-based approach to the keto diet.
Okay.
Great guy, very intelligent doctor, and doing great work. Then in terms of fasting and things like that, we will, of course, want to achieve balance, right? That's the whole premise that I think TCM and Western medicine is coming to in different ways. I love seeing how ancient TCM methods are being brought to light in Western science and study and things like that.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic, but that's a slightly different topic. But fasting, I think, can be fantastic. If you look traditionally, we didn't have food from the moment we woke up till the moment we hit our bed and go to sleep. We should have moments of fasting. I think as even different sexes can handle fasting in different ways. Females are more nurturing and commonly are going to need more frequent eating than males. Some of the research is showing that males can handle longer fast periods more effectively and safer. Yeah. I still think there's a lot more research that's needed on those topics, and there's going to be a bell curve within that and extremes on either side. So please don't take anything I'm saying as a sexist
Well, females do produce blood that requires, nutrients, micronutrients, et cetera. So, and, we produce blood, but not as much as they do, right?
Absolutely. And so, I think intermittent fasting is fantastic. I'm having some fun diving deeper into some of the fast mimicking diets and getting some fantastic results with that with my patients. And with the idea, though, of let's come back to common sense. Let's come back to what's the most natural thing our body's designed to do, and what type of stimulus, and I love the word stress, is good for our body. The same way that exercise is a stress to our muscles, we know that exercise doesn't make us stronger.
Right.
It makes us weaker temporarily. And it's our adaptation to that stress that makes us better. I think fasting can be thought of the same way, that we want to stress our system to be able to acclimate and handle different scenarios in a more efficient way. As can breath holds, as can postural, challenges, all of those types of things. We want to look at it as stress is a great thing when executed properly.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with Matt Walden, he's a trainer. He's a Paul Chek trainer out of London. He's been working with us on our health and human performance coaching program, and we were discussing with this concept of the allostatic load, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and that speaks to this, this homeostasis of stressors, good, bad, and that speaks to that.
And I think there's an important concept of over stimulus, over stressing, and under recovery. You know what I mean?
Over stressing and under. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
There's I think less in the fitness world, less overtraining. Than we complain about. There's a huge problem with under recovery, though. Oh,
for sure.
Overtraining happens at a very different threshold if you're not sleeping right and you're stressed out of your mind and your nutrition is subpar. We need to look at it from a different perspective and see how those ratios can change.
Interesting. So true. Yeah. I mean, that's always a question in my mind when I'm working with patients. It's like, we only get them for what, we're only in a room with our patients or outside training them for an hour. Right. And some of that hour is them just chilling, right? Just relaxing with needles in them or whatever. Yeah. But the rest of the time, the interval between, it's like they're doing whatever they're going to do. So our ability to manage help them manage their health is only as good as our ability to measure their outcomes. Right. So how are you finding that? Where's that sweet spot with, what have you found to effectively? Is it just through your charting and my pain is at a 7 this week and last week it was at 10, or what are you noticing? I mean, obviously you have got objective and subjective measurements. How are you?
Absolutely.
How are you keeping
I really
track?
think the core of what I try to get through to my patients is getting them in touch with their own bodies again. Because distraction, I think, is the most overused drug in our society right now. We tune out, we disconnect in a terrible way. And so if we can reconnect them to what innately they already know, we're going to have the most profound effect. Because like you said, we're only there for an hour. Even if I can test something incredibly specifically, that test is accurate for how much time, what's going on the other 23 hours a day, or how many days or weeks I'm in between I'm seeing them. Where I get so much more data from them if I teach them how to listen and trust their body. And I think it was a really fun and profound conversation that we had actually in one of the doctoral classes about how often the patients know the answers. They don't trust themselves to actually follow through with that. And if we can stop them and talk them through that process and use almost that Socratic method of questioning them until they come to the realization and epiphany of, I knew this all along and I got myself into the situation. I'm the only one that can get myself out. That health responsibility, all of those different aspects of basically enlightenment. I think that's the most crucial component of information taking and charting, and all of that is trying to figure out how to get them to that point. Then on top of that, it's really fun to test your theories, test what they feel, see, I mean, the basics of even just looking at their posture, you see that they're listed way off to one side. Ask them where their weight distribution is. Does it feel equal on both feet? You can start to learn whether you can trust them or not. And where is the baseline, and how do we get them to, being accurate once again in their reading of their own body. I love different technology and all those fun, tricks and tests and measurement tools. But I think without that baseline of being in touch with your body, it almost does us a disservice to an extent, where we take the responsibility away from that connection, that innate consciousness.
Yeah.
And we rely on technology, which is only good when Wi-Fi's up.
Right.
So we have to disconnect from the grid and reconnect with our own body.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting people, like you say, getting them empowered and introspective so that they're able to tune in, instead of relying on you to, because you're not always going to be there for them. Right.
I don't think any of us want to be. I think there's no shortage of people that want to be healthier.
Yeah.
And so if we can teach as many people as we can to trust in themselves, we're never going to be terribly slow in healthcare. I think where there's going to be an overabundant need for more practitioners and assistance in our healthcare crisis. But getting back to those basics are fantastic. And then you have your patients coming in with accurate feedback of how they felt, how often they had their symptoms, because they're in tune again. They aren't distracted.
Yeah.
And I look at the markers of how much less medication they need, how much, more vitality, and how active they are on those levels, far more than even though I use those other measurement tools, far more than I trust or put weight in those other measurement tools.
Mm-hmm. Are you using things like Oura Ring or, test sleep and heart rate and those kinds of things? Or are you using technologies? Are you using like genetic testing, look at, genetic predispositions? And
I love a whole bunch of different functional tests. I'm really blessed to have a few fantastic naturopaths, MDs, and chiropractors on the island that I work closely with to hopefully be able to get as much of that covered by insurance, since I have a strictly cash practice and don't work with insurance at all. I work with a little network to be able to have as much of that covered and worked on as a team.
Nice.
I love genetic testing. I think it's fantastic. I think that, again, though, we need to use common sense within it and not use it as a blame shifting, like, that's why I can't, exercise is because my genes say I can't.
Right.
Rather use it as a little insight into how can we take that knowledge and apply it to our longevity and our health goals. How can we use it to give us information to prevent the catastrophic events from happening that you're predisposed to?
Right.
That's where I love genetics, and use that for nutritional recommendations, exercise recommendations, supplements, and things that might be able to offset some of their predispositions and things like that. I haven't used Oura Ring. I've used a few other sleep apps and things like that. Sleep Cycle and a few others that I've had some fun playing around with, but not using any of them on every patient or anything like that. Again, I kind of take that approach to what's the most potent test or what's our best bang for our buck. I do love a lot of the functional labs and the functional medicine components that are so widely used. I'm thankful for blood, urine, neurotransmitter testing, hormone testing, those types of things. I'm using those a lot more. I use a lot of just functional testing on a movement level. And so a non-technologically measurable level is you can watch the way someone walks. I feel very confident watching the way someone stands with their eyes open and eyes closed. And I can tell you how you're going to walk, run, jump, squat. I can tell you where you're going to fall into your weaknesses just based off of the muscle tension that you can see in a standing static posture. And so I think that's the baseline that I use with most people because of the financial ease of it, the speed in which that test is performed, the ability to retest so fast and easy. I use simple photos, love x-rays, love MRIs. I love all that, more advanced
Radiological stuff.
radiological studies, but simple photos can tell you a dramatic amount. Slow motion video shows you so much. And like things like balance boards that I'm testing a few different ones right now. And I'm excited to hopefully at the symposium have more strong recommendations with a whole bunch of case studies I'll be presenting on some of those findings, what's working, what's not working for me.
So speaking of the symposium, I do want to mention to our listeners that that Dustin will be speaking on November 1st at the Pacific Symposium here in town at the Catamaran Hotel. And his focus will be on pain and posture and functional medicine application. And we're super excited to have you come out for that. And hopefully we'll get to surf together.
I hope so.
Yeah. Get Jack out in the water and go paddle out. It won't be like Kauai, but you have to rent a wetsuit.
All good with me. I look at the surf as the one out in the water having the most fun is the best surfer, as Duke Kahanamoku would commonly say.
Yeah.
And, just being out there and sharing, that experience of being in the ocean with all those awesome ions and natural air and all that, it is so therapeutic. So I cherish that, and so thankful for the opportunity to chat with you, and look forward to hopefully seeing as many listeners as possible at the symposium. I think it's going to be a fantastic event this year.
Yeah, for sure. And to our listeners who are out there, please come up and introduce yourself to Dustin. Just a wealth of information, and come check him out at the symposium for sure. And we're going to link to his website, get more information there on what he does and how he has taken his Chinese medicine doctoral degree just to another level, and incorporated, all of his wonderful training and interests. And, Dustin, it's been such an honor to speak with you and meet you. And I look forward to meeting you in person. But this has been so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lane. And just a quick little teaser of some of the other things that I'm going to be introducing during my talk at Symposium, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Something called the breath belt, and how to use a apparatus to strength train your diaphragm, a muscle that nobody is talking about strength training.
Nice.
Neurologically releasing the psoas, activating that zone 1 within minutes. And so I'll be talking about that and its functional applications to everything digestive wise, like all the breath stuff that we talked about. Some of the laser therapy work that we're doing, and how to use specific types of lasers for relief neurologically, musculoskeletal stuff, pain applications, like cranial nerve activation, neurological chemical changes, all kinds of fun stuff.
Sweet.
And yeah, so there's going to be a whole bunch of some really easy functional testing too. Brain span labs for testing omega-3 index and cognitive health from a simple blood drop that is very applicable to Chinese medical practitioners, and things that they could recommend their patients to do in office or in house without having to go to a lab. And so there's going to be some great points and clinical pearls, and easy to apply to your practice or your personal health.
That's awesome. I can't wait to get that belt on my diaphragm.
There we go.
Stretch that diaphragm out. Yeah,
that's right. Well, thank you so much.
Yep. I appreciate your time, and all the best until we see you here in November.
Thank you. Aloha.
Okay. Aloha. Take it easy.